Boker Tov.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you.
Morning.
I remember I saw that Mr. Word that said the Ramah that says that if the place, if the minig amakom, that means there was minig. It means that the place that that everyone makes it for a way that it is makabel tumah. So then, even though you didn't, then really it's kosher. But like a marasayan, that the Rosh turns that into the Gemara somehow. The Ashikach. Okay, the new
Right, right. But from that, the bottom line is that it would help. Maforish would help, except in a place where the minhag hamakom is against.
Good. Okay, so the first paragraph was about mostly the structure of the sukkah, and now the next paragraph is going to talk about the person sitting in the sukkah. So the Mishnah started. We did the Mishnah yesterday, and we'll do it again. The point was that you can't be under an ohel. You can't be under something which is going to separate between you and schach. So the Mishnah started about somebody sleeping under the bed. And we had Machlokes, Tanakam holds that you're not Yotzei, and it was supported by a story of Rav Shimon that Rabbi Gamliel said about his servant Tavi that he's sleeping under the bed because he knows that he doesn't have to be in the sukkah. He's potter from the sukkah, that's why he can be under the bed. And from there you see that Rabbi Gamliel held that you're not Yotzei the mitzvah of sukkah sleeping under the bed. But Rabbi Yehuda, in contrast, said that they themselves, the people, the Talmidim, they were not servants, they were the Bnei Yisrael that are chayiv in sukkah. They did sleep under the bed and they are Yotzei. So Machlokes in the Mishnah, if you're Yotzei, the mitzvah of sukkah sleeping under the bed. Let's see it inside again. Right, you're not Yotzei under the bed. But the Gemara is going to going to say only if it's 10 tefachim, and less than 10 tefachim you are Yotzei. And most of the beds nowadays are not 10 tefachim. And also the bunk beds are also not 10 tefachim. I think the average bunk bed is not 10 tefachim. So according to that, you can have a bunk bed and you can sleep on the bottom bed because you're. I think that it depends how do you count the 10 tefachim from the bed to the bed or from the bed to the floor. And if the beds are connected, if the top bed is not connected to the bottom bed, you have very long legs, then it could be a count from the floor, and it'll be 10 tefachim, it'll be oil to the bottom bed. But the regular bunk beds that the beds are connected in a way that the top legs are connected to the bed, so then you count from bed to bed. And usually you don't have 10 tefachim between the two beds, you'll be able to have a bunk bed. The mission starts. If you're under the bed, you're not Yotzei the mitzvah. We are Yotzei. We Talmidim used to sleep under the beds. This Canaan were in the sukkah, and there wasn't enough room. We went under the bed, and they didn't say it's a problem. So you see, it's okay. So Yehuda argues says that it is good. The Gemara is going to discuss why does he hold that. Rav Shimon he's supporting the Tanakama that you're not Yotzei. That Rabbi Gamliel said about his servant Tavi that was sleeping under the bed in the sukkah. He told us, "Can you see my servant is a Talmud Chacham? He knows that avadim slaves are potter from the sukkah, like Ever Kanani, Chayv Mitzvah Kisha, Mitzvah Sasei Shazman Grama the potter, and therefore he's sleeping under the bed because he doesn't have to be in the sukkah." Well, the Fida Ken Olamavnu. So Rav Shimon says, from Rabbi Gamliel, we could deduce Shayash and Tachasamita lo yatzedei chabaz. That Yatinati was under the bed. That's why Dafka Tavi, he was under the bed because he doesn't have to be in the sukkah. Agav, we have in Yuma towards the end of Maseches Yoma that Pei Zayin, one page before the end, that Tavi over there, it says this Tavi was going to get smicha if he wouldn't have been Eved Kanani. Over there, the Gemara says that person with his actions he affects future generations. Over there, it says Aaron, he affected future generations that his son Elazar and his son was saved because of him, and Canaan that he all posterity to be avadim, and that many of his avadim could have been Talmidei Chachamim smicha. And it says here Tavi over there is an example. So here it says he's Talmud Chacham, there it says he's royal smicha. And what did the Gemara say from the fact that he slept under the bed is because he knows that avadim are pturim and asaka. So machlokes if you're Yotzei the mitzvah under the bed. The Gemara is the kasha, but like Asara, most beds it seems that the Gemara thinks there's not 10 tefachim, and especially to the Gemara that it's only going to be a problem of a hafsaka only if it's 10 tefachim high. And the Gemara says, yes, you're right. Shmuel says the Mishnah is talking about a 10 tefachim high bed. 10 tefachim measuring from the floor until the bottom of the bed, not the top of the bed, the bottom of the bed. If there's not 10 tefachim, then you're allowed to sleep under the bed, even according to Tanakama. The machlokes is when the bed is 10 tefachim off the ground. You do see no high beds. Even in English, the expression is to climb into bed. Nowadays, we don't climb; you fall into bed. So I don't know why they made such. Why did they make such high beds in those days? I don't know. Anybody have any reason? It seems to be a culture.
Because of animals on the ground, insects,
and they don't climb up the legs. They're safer.
I mean, the biggest invention of mankind besides shoes was a window. They can close a door, and that would prevent like jumping fleas and everything else from coming into your home.
Okay, so the Mishnah says the Gemara is all over that the problem that the issue of the bed is only when it's 10 Tvachim on. The rest of the Gemara now is going to go into a subject, side subjects, that's going to come back to explain why Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah might hold that it's not a problem. We don't have any understanding why Rabbi Yehuda holds that's not a problem. You're under an oil, 10 Tvachim on. Why should the bed not be considered an interruption between you and the schach? So the Gemara starts with a left field subject. Tanan Nasam. We learned over there. This is a Mishnah in Ohelis about what's considered an ohel as far as tumas meis. That if you're in the same tent, the same cover under the same covering as a dead man or a piece of a dead man, so it gives off tumah. The ohel carries the tumah. So here it says echad choresh mayim o shvatzim o shachlasu malachas shachalatu malachas. If you have a hole which was made naturally by water, you have by a rock that's near the river, and the water is always beating against it, so it can cause eventually that maybe the word is to erode. I'm not sure what the word is exactly, and that would cause a hole in the rock, or shvatzim that ate away at it, or malachas. Malachas is like minerals that the saltiness of the rocks of the earth would break open. So all kinds of natural holes that weren't made intentionally for the purpose of an ohel. These were made by man, but it wasn't made for the intention of making an ohel. The case here is if you have a pile of stones or you have a pile of beams, and without intention, it could be that you have one on top of two in a way that the two are separated and there is an ohel. So you didn't make an ohel intentionally, but if you have beams and two beams are on the floor separated from each other and another beam is on top of them, so it created an ohel under the top beam. So even though you have an actual beam which was made by man, but it wasn't made with intention to make an ohel. He doesn't care about it. It happens just to be. It happened by itself. So all these cases are going to be considered ohel she'eino aseh b'yedei adam. I'll see the next line that it's the ohel she'eino aseh b'yedei adam. It wasn't made manually. Even if it was made by man's hand, but it wasn't made for the intention of an ohel, that's also considered an ohel which was not made by man. So Tanna Kamma holds that it's all these things ma'al ala otama. Tanna Kamma says it is a good ohel. His machlok is going on. Tanna Kamma says that all these things are considered an ohel. But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda knows that it's not. So we have machlokes over here, Mishnah in Ohelis. If a ohel is made unintentionally, does it have the din of an ohel as far as tumas meis? Tanna Kamma says that it is. Rabbi Yehuda says that it's not. Without the Gemara is not going to spell it out exactly. We'll get to it eventually. But that would have been a possible guess why Rabbi Yehuda knows that it's not a problem to be under the bed, because the bed was not made for the purpose of being an ohel under it. What do you make a bed for? In order to sleep on it. You don't make it happens to form an ohel under it, but that wasn't what it was made for. You put it on legs in order to elevate it, then automatically you get an ohel under it. But that might be considered ohel she'eino aseh b'yedei adam, even though man built the bed, but it wasn't made for the purpose of making the ohel. So that might have been a pshat in Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara doesn't spell it out, but that's the whole what the Gemara is aiming at. And we're going to continue to see if that might be the pshat in the Mishnah. So the first possible pshat in the Mishnah, why we hold that it's not a problem to sleep under the bed, is because since the bed was not made for the intention of being an ohel, it's not considered an ohel. Tanna Kamma holds that it is considered an ohel, and therefore you can't sleep under the bed. Bottom line, my time with Rabbi Yehuda. Where's Rabbi Yehuda get that there's not a problem of that? Oh, I'm sorry, that an ohel which is not made intentionally is not an ohel. Top line in the next page. Yalif Ohel Mishkan. He learns Gzer Shava from the Ohel that it says by the Mishkan, by the tabernacle. They made the Mishkan over there. It says the word Ohel, and over there obviously was made for the intention of making a roof over the Mishkan. So too the Ohel that it says by Tumas Meis that dead man or part of a dead man carries tumah in the Ohel is also only an Ohel which was made intentionally. Over here, but Tumas Meis in Parshas Chukas it says these are the laws of a man who dies in an ohel, that the whole ohel becomes tummy under the ohel. Over there by the Mishkan, by the process of Allah Mishkan, that Moshe spread out the ohel on the Mishkan. So that over there was made intentionally. We have an ohel. Here's the word ohel. Here's the word ohel, and here's the word ohel. So Gzer Shava, these two ohels, and just like over there by the Mishkan, it was made intentionally. Here too, it's only considered an ohel if it was made intentionally by man. That would be the source, that an ohel which was not made intentionally is not considered an ohel. The Rabbanan argue and say that it is an ohel even if it was made unintentionally. Ohel biba. It says many times the word oil in the parasha of Tumas Meis, even though it does say this one time the word oil, but it says again and again, and it's extra words. That's to teach you that any kind of an oil, not just the oil of the Gzer Shava, any kind of oil is also considered an oil. So you have machlokas, and at this point we're happy that the Pshat Mishnah, the reason why Yehuda holds that you can't sleep, you may sleep under the bed is because it's not made intentionally for an oil. It doesn't have a din of an oil. There was a problem from a different Rabbi Yehuda. For some Rabbi Yehuda, Kolol She'enasi B'Dad Mein Oil, we're being told that the Yehuda means that Yehuda holds that an oil which was not made intentionally is not considered an oil. I'll show you a case. Rabbi Yehuda holds that an oil that was not made intentionally is an oil. For a minute. So this is a very interesting subject about paraduma, and just a little background. We have a little bit of it in Maseches Yoma also. That the paraduma, when they finally got a paraduma, they wanted to burn it. So it was a big process in order to burn it in the correct way. And the Kohen, who's going to be doing the burning of the paraduma, they slaughter it on Har HaZeisim, and they sprinkle the blood towards the Mishkan, towards the Beis HaMikdash, and they burn it after they slaughter it. And from the ashes of this, there are many halachas over there. You throw into it also Ezov, Shnit Olas. Sorry. Okay, and then they burn it, and then they have the ashes of the paraduma. Then also you have to mix it with water, mayim chayim, and then you sprinkle onto a person who became tamei meis. Anybody who became defiled, the tamei, because they have contact with the dead, so you can't become tahor by going to the mikveh. You also have to have paraduma. That's why nowadays we're all tamei because we have contact with the dead, and there's no way to become tahor until you have the paraduma. So the person who does the paraduma, the kohen, how tahor does he have to be? The halacha is that it's enough to be at full yom. At full yom means that he went to the mikveh that day, even if he was tamei, he went to the mikveh that day, he's allowed to do the paraduma. It doesn't have to be very, very tall. The tztukim, that they didn't have the Masorah of Torah Shabbat Peh, they just did according to what they thought, or the way they read the simple words. They said that you have to have Har Shemesh, that you also have to be even more Torah. They were like Machmir, and they said that you have to even have wait until the nightfall, and then you can be Torah. If you went to the mikveh the same day, it's not good enough. And that's not true. So even though it's they didn't do the paraduma. Paraduma was something that's done nationally. The Bezdin did it. Not that every person did one, but we wanted to show that they're wrong. So we dafka did the leniency. They could have done. We could have been machmir also and used Har Shemesh, but you don't have to. So we wanted to show them that that's not so, and therefore the kohen that did the paraduma, they would dafka make him tamei and go to the mikvah, and he should be at full yom. In order to show that the leniency that you don't have to have Har Shemesh. It's enough to be at full yom. But because of that, it's like when you have something and you go to the left, that people go too much to the left, and they'll think that paraduma is not so chumor, you don't have to be so careful in the Torah. So Chazal made many, many chumras, like you would say wild chumras, to make that it's very rare to be very makbid on the Torah, and at the end they make him tamei and go into the mikvah. So there must be something behind the scenes why they did all this, but they went very, very wild, I would say. Maybe it's the wrong word to use, but they went very extreme. Must be a reason why they went so extreme. And the chumras, they made the chumras because at the end, after all the chumras, they're going to make him tamei and then make him to show that that's lukim are wrong. There must be a deep reason why they did it. But what they did over here was very extreme. What did they do? That they made that when the Kohen that they're going to do the paraduma, they make him very, very tar before he's going to become tummy. They're going to make him tummy anyway, but they make him very, very tar. How do they make him tar? They're going to sprinkle on him from the previous paradumas in order to make him tar. And in the process of making him tar, they wanted that the water that is being drawn in order to sprinkle on him from the ashes of the paraduma, you have to have mayim chayim, you have to have both the ashes of the previous paraduma plus also water, mayim chayim. So the water should be drawn by children that are mamish tahor. How tahor? That they never became tamei. Of course, if a person has the ashes of paraduma, so then he becomes tahor. But the best thing would be that he never became tahor in the first place. How could you get people that are never tamei in the first place? So they made a special chatzer. They made a special courtyard that was lifted off the ground a tefach. The whole courtyard was lifted off the ground a tefach in a way that even if there was a dead man under, they never touched the ground. They're always all mafsik. And children they should be born. They brought women that would give birth, and the kids would grow up over there. They never went off the chutzah. They stayed in the chutzah, and they probably paid them a lot of money that they should volunteer for that. And many years that the women, they never went off. The women can go off, but the kids always stayed in the chutzah until it was time that they got a paraduma, and then they would be the ones who would go to draw the water. And we're going to see now how they went out off the chutzah. When they finally did go off the chutzah, we also want to make sure they shouldn't be walking on the earth, which also might be some grave, might be unknown grave, might be under the earth. So that's going to get to our subject. But soon it says that the woman gave birth on top of this uplifted elevated chutzner in a way that there was no tumah over there for sure, and they would grow up over there for many years until they would be old enough and if they have a paraduma. It's interesting because they didn't know they could have a paraduma. When did they get a paraduma? It doesn't always happen. But if they did get a paraduma, you'd have these children that are available in order to draw the water for the sprinkling of the ashes of the parah onto the Kohen who's going to do the paraduma, and then we're going to make him tameh. So here goes the Mishnah. It says, there were courtyards that were built in Yerushalayim on top of a cellar. Cellar means the rock. It doesn't mean that we're small. It means like a whole bedrock kind of thing. And the under that rock was a hollow space, which was a tefach, in order to avoid any tumah that might have been on the ground, which we don't know about, which is called kever tom. Kever tom means, Rashi says, means a doubtful kever, unknown kever. You don't know. Maybe there's a grave there from 1,000 years ago, and it has tumah. I'm exaggerating 1,000 years, whatever, it might be a grave you don't know about. Before people remarked it, they don't know that it's there. So in order to avoid any suffix tumah, we made a whole chutzner that's elevated off the ground. They would bring pregnant women who would give birth over there on that courtyard. And they would raise their children over there that they should be able to do the drawing of the water for the paraduma and for the Kohen who's going to be burning the paraduma. Now, when it comes time to do the paraduma, and you have to go to the Shiloach, went to the river Shiloach in order to get the water, how are the kids going to go off the chutzner? We're watching them for years that they should never have been any contact to the tumah. Now we're going to go finally to get the water. Now they're going to walk onto the ground? No. So we transported them in a way they should still be elevated a tefach off the ground with an ohel under them in order that if there's any tumah, there should be some kind of afsaka. What do? They would bring oxen that had a board on top of them, like a door, like a big board, and they would sit on top of the board. So the board now is going to be all mafsik. They would be transported by this ox that has a board on top of him, and we sit them on top of the board, and they'd hold on in order not to fall off. And this ox would take them to the shiloh. Everyone's got probably a whole parade going with them to get the water for the paraduma. These kids would sit on top. The kosher shlavin be them that have earthen cups. Stone cups. The purpose is to know that it shouldn't be mikabel tumah. Again, it's a chumrah because you can take a kli and put it into the mikvah and whatever paraduma, whatever you need, but they took stoneware because stoneware is not susceptible to tumah at all. And then they would fill up the water with these stone cups. When they came to the shiloh, so then they would have to go off they would or they could, we'll see in a second. They went off the oxen into the water to get the water, and then they came up again. And then they went back onto the oxen, then they're going to continue back to the base of Mikdash. They bring the water to sprinkle onto the Kohen who's going to be doing the paraduma. Now, when they go off the oxen, that's a temporary problem because maybe there's a grave under the water. You don't know. Under the shiloh, maybe there's some piece of a dead man or a dead grave that's under the shiloh. So are you choshesh for that? So Tanakama seems that it's not choshesh because he says they go off the ox while they're going on the dry land. So then stay on top of the ox over there with the door. Once they get into the shiloh, so then they can go down. Rabbi Yossi says even there with choshesh that maybe there's going to be some dead substance, a man or a piece of a dead man that's going to cause tumah to the children if they go off the ox. So stay on top of the ox, stay on top of that door, and use a rope in order to lower down the kli into the water and then bring it up again. Even that he was choshesh for. Rashi says, Rashi says that the reason why Rabbi Yossi holds, Tanakam holds that you should go down because he holds that you're not allowed to lower it down. It has to be filled up manually without any rope. But Taisvis has kashas on that, they're fresh mishnais, that they did use a rope in order to lower it down. Doesn't have to be done intentionally, it could even be done by itself. So Taisvis says the machlokes is not if you may go down into the water, but you surely may. But the Tanakhama says, well, again, how does it go? That not that Tanakhama says you must go down into the water, but you may go down into the water. You don't have to be choshesh for the kebatom for such a small place under the shiloach. And Rabbi Yossi holds even for that you choshesh, but not that you must go down to the water. Rashi says that according to Tanakhama, they must go off because that's fill it up manually without a rope. But Taisus proves that that's not true. Anyway, what do we want? We didn't get it to our point yet. Just we got the background about transporting these children from the chutzner, from the courtyard that they were born on, to go to the shiloach. Tanakama says that they went on top of an ox which had a board on top of it. Now to the point, the Tanya Abiyud Omer, they didn't use any boards, they went on the oxen themselves without any board. Tanakama says that they put a board on top of the ox, and that was the ohel that the children sat on top of, and they were divided from any tumah which might be under them. But Rabbi says he didn't do that. He just had the oxen himself. The kid sat on the ox. Why does the Gemara want from all this? How does it come in? That the ox, he's saying the ox is an ohel. Rabbi Yehuda holds that you don't have to have a board. Why not? You have no board, so where's the ohel? Maybe there's tumah on the ground and the kid is riding on the ox. The tumah is going to go through the ox, so to speak, and make the kid tummy. So how could riding on the ox be any different than walking on the floor? Must be that the ox is considered an ohel. But the ox wasn't made to be an ohel. The ox is not made to be an ohel. So how come Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's a good ohel? Rabbi Yehuda, l'shitasa, Rabbi Yehuda, according to what he holds, that a ohel which was not made for the intention of an ohel is not an ohel. A natural ohel is not an ohel. So the ox is a natural ohel. So it shouldn't be good enough. Rabbi Yehuda holds
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yes, please.
Why does Tuma go through an ox if it isn't an ohel?
Why should it not? Why should it not go?
Why does it stop? And the board, I see the board is an ohel.
The board is an ohel, but the ox is not.
Okay.
The ox should depend. If you hold, like the Rabbanan, that a natural ohel, even if it's not made intentionally for that purpose of being an ohel, it's also an ohel. So fine, the ox could be an ohel. It's considered. It's an ohel. It's a piece of something which is not makabel tuma. The ox itself is not makabel tuma. It's a live animal, and it could be mafsik. It could be an ohel over the tumah, which is on the ground. But if you hold, like Rabbi Yehuda, that if it was not made intentionally for an ohel, it's not an ohel, so the ox should not be considered an ohel. That's the most conscious contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda. A non-intentional ohel is an ohel or not? Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda seems to say that it is. And this now was questioning, and without speaking it out, it was really questioning our Mishnah, that here Rabbi Yehuda holds that it is considered an ohel. If it's an ohel, so the case of the sukkah, when you're sitting under the board, sleeping under the bed, it should be a problem because here it says that unintentional ohel is ohel according to Rabbi Yehuda. So why does he allow you to sleep under the bed of the sukkah? The word doesn't speak about sukkah yet, but that's what's behind the scenes the whole time. So that's the most kasha. But shvom did the ohel shen osi b'de'el the move b'katan Rabbi Yehuda below mivian glasses hello shvorim. The oxen are not made intentionally, and still Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's considered a good ohel because it says you don't need doors, you don't bring doors. The answer is so it's contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda. It depends how big this ohel is. If it's only a tefach, then the minimum size of ohel is a tefach off the ground. So if it's tefach off the ground, all the case we had before that, like I said in the Mishnah before, and all this spoke about, just to jump back a second, before it says about all these different kind of bricks and beams that we said that you have an unintentional ohel over there, they were tefach off the ground. After that, Rabbi Yehuda said that if it's not made intentionally, so it's not an ohel. But here we're saying that Rabbi Yehuda's moda, if it's a malo egrov. What does a malo egrov mean? It's a couple of tvachim. Rashi says that it's about the size of a head, which I say was about 3-4 tvachim. How big is a person's head? About 3 or 4 tvachim. The word egrov, Rashi says, means a fist. So the question is a fist. A fist is the size of a hand. It's a tefach. So Rashi says that there's a ben avatiach, which Rashi says is some big giant, and his fist was the size of a person's head. So that's an interesting shot. But the point is that it's a couple of tvachim. And even though Rabbi Yehuda holds that, what's the problem?
We say that the hand is.
We're saying now that a tefach.
Tefach is five.
A tefach is a hand breadth. But now we're saying that there's something called the malo egrov, which is bigger than that. It's about approximately the size of a head. So it's interesting that they use this example to say what this egrov, the fist of this giant called Ben Avatiach. Very interesting. The Rambam has a much simpler pshat. The Rambam Pesach Mishnah says that egrov is a shingle. It's the size of a shingle that you make roofs with, nothing to do with a fist. The word egrov over here means usually a fist, like the pasuk says, "Be'evan o be'egrov." But he says that egrov doesn't mean that. It means a shingle. A shingle that they make roofs, the red tiles that they use they make the roofs out of. Shingles?
Ra'afim. You're talking about the tiles, the slats that they use on the
roofs. So that's what the Rambam says. And it says Ben Avatiach was one of these shingle makers. That so nothing to do. Everyone agrees to the pshat, the idea. The idea behind this is a couple of tvachim. It's bigger than a tefach. What the exact translation is a machlokes in the Rishonim. But anyway, what happens that the Yehuda himself, even though he holds that a non-intentional ohel is not an ohel, that's only if it's a tefach. But if it's a couple of tvachim big, it's a malo egrov. So then Rabbi Yehuda also agrees that it's considered an ohel. So we have reconciled the contradiction. It means the case before that, the Yehuda said that a non-intentional ohel is not an ohel. The case of the beams and the bricks and the hole that was eroded into the the stone, all these cases that it's not made intentional, so it's not considered an ohel, is because it was only a tefach and it was not intentional. But if it will be a couple of tefachim the size of an egg growth, so then he also would agree. And therefore he says that the oxen, that the space between the floor and the stomach of the ox, or as Rashi says, even we'll see soon the hollow cavity of the ox, that's a couple of tefachim, the back of the ox is considered an oil, even though the back of the ox was not made intentionally for that purpose. But that's all. Since it's a malol egg growth, there's a lot of space under there in the cavity of the ox, or under the ox's abdomen to the floor. There's a couple of tefachim. So therefore, it's a malol egg growth, and therefore, even though it's not made intentionally, it's still considered a oil. They're eventually going to get to the point that the bed, the Bar Mishnah,
Right,
that we're in trouble. We're in trouble now because the bed is a malol egg growth off the ground. So our shot that we suspected that we had it. We hoped that we had a shot to explain to Yehuda because it was the bed is not made intentionally. So that's a problem. The Yehuda holds you could sleep under the bed, and we thought the reason is because it's unintentional oil, so it's not considered an oil. But that doesn't help us because Yehuda's moda, he agrees that if it will be a malol egg growth that size, which is a couple of tefachim, so then it is considered an oil, even though it's not made intentionally. And the bed is that category. The bed is a case where it's a couple of tefachim, it's a malol egg growth off the ground, so it should be considered an oil. So we're in trouble that we don't know Pshat Yehuda anymore. Why are you allowed to sleep under the bed? But it'll take a little bit of time till we get there. So far, that's what the Gemara is holding by. The Gemara is a side problem now, which is not our subject at all. You can put it in parentheses if you want. The Gemara is going to ask, how come don't bring a door? You don't need a door maybe, but why not? Why don't bring a door? The Tanakh says they bought doors and they put kids on top of the doors. They really said no door. They went on the oxen itself. Like, is there any problem? Any problem to ring the door? The doors are surely good. He holds that the ox is good enough, but what's wrong with the door? The way the market, what?
Logistically, to move an ox with a door, a slat, and to tie it down in a way that the kid's not going to fall off or be terrified, and to get it physically all the way to Shiloh is a big undertaking.
It seems that they had no problem how to tie it on, to fasten it in a way that it'll be straight. Maybe they made a seatbelt, whatever they need for the kid.
And the kid's scared. He's a little boy.
Yeah. He hasn't been out in the world yet.
He hasn't been out for years.
Ever, not for years, ever. He never went out. This is the first. This is his first journey out into the world.
You got to do it. It's a trick.
And on the actually, so
They're assuming that the logistics is not a problem, that's all.
right.
No, they went to the local pet store and bought an ox child carrier kit.
Besides, he's an energetic little boy and he's the curious kid. And he'll be okay, but he might be
Okay.
terrified in the whole.
They've been probably grooming him for this. This is his whole purpose. They're probably telling the whole time. Probably practiced inside the chutzner with the ox the whole time. Okay. The Gemara continues. Yes, please.
They had one of the scanner on a copy machine. I got to scan something that said urgent for the tax. No?
Delas, the Yesh Bakama Grofen, the Katani Abu Omer Lamivim glasses Elish Run. The Gemara is the Kasha that the Delas surely should be good. The door surely should be good. The Gemara throws in that there's Kama Grofen. That's a little difficult. We're having difficulty with these words because it makes it sound like it also has to have a few Grofen. The truth is the door is made with the Adam. The door is better than that. So the whole issue about the egg growth is when it's not made, when it's made unintentionally. So then the Gemara said that Yehuda holds that if it's an egg growth, it's gonna be a oil also. And if it's not an egg growth, so then it's not made intentionally. But these words of Yeshba, Kama, egg growth are a little bit chidush because that's not the point at all. The door is made for an oil. The question of Gemara in short is, why is the door not good? The door is surely good. It even has Memni Grofen also. So Rashi tries to talk about why he says these words, but we're just going to say that the Gemara means to say that what's wrong with the door. And even if you have any problem, it has Memni Grofen also. So why is the door not good? Because why Dafka Shvarm? What's wrong with the door? I'm Rabbi, you're right. Doesn't mean you have to have Dafka the ox. But so you don't have to bring doors. The ox is good enough. If you want to bring a door, for sure that's good. The door is mamish. The board is short. Mamish ohel. But he's saying you don't need it because the ox is good enough. And the Gemara just explained why is it good enough? Because even though it's not meat b'dei odam, but it's the egg growth off the ground. Rabbi Amar, Dafka, don't bring a door. So Chaim David pointed out that maybe the kid is scared. The Gemara is going to say that we want to make him scared, and he's more scared on the ox. He's more scared on the ox than he's on the door. That's a little different than you said. On the ox, he's not so comfortable. On the door, he's comfortable. Dafka don't bring the door. Why? That if he's on the door, he feels very comfortable. He has a flat area, and he's walking around over there, and he can stick out his hand or his head to see what's doing. So we want him not to feel so comfortable, and if he does that, then it's kept home again. He stuck his hand off past the door, so or maybe he's going to hold on to it, whatever you're going to say, and he's going to stick his hand out, and then if there is the kever home underground, he became tamei. We want him to be dafka on top. So what do? So the next page over here.
You're gonna tie him up?
No, we're going to take away the door. And
So the problem is on the door because he'll be comfortable and he'll move his hand outside the door.
right. If he's on the door, he'll feel like Rashi says, like he's on the top floor of someplace. He feel like he's comfortable, like he's on his
He's
floor.
riding in a Cadillac.
And he's
No,
gonna,
he's like a chassan on the table.
yeah, right. But he's gonna stick his head out. But this way, you leave him on the ox, and he's holding on for dear life. Because also dear life, I'd say also that the ox is a pretty big ox. Most stays with a fat ox, and the kids riding on it. His feet as he rides on a horse, feet separated on both sides of the ox, big ox. So he's not going anyplace. Like he's staying right on top until he wants to jump off in order to go into the shiloach. But he's not going to stick any head out. He's going to fall off if he does. So therefore, he should dafka use the door. This is all a side subject. It's not us. It doesn't relate to us at all. This is our question over there. How come dafka not use the door? Tani Kabas at the Rava, Bryce says like Rava that not like a Baal who says you don't need a door, but dafka don't bring a door. If you don't bring any door. If he's going to feel too comfortable, the word agasa is like a custom. Rashi says, maybe he's going to stick out his head or one of his limbs. Yeah, he wants to see what's doing it in the world. This is his first outing.
That's the extremes.
His first time he's out of the chutzah, so he wants to see what's doing over there. So he might stick out his head or his hand. So what do? No doors. Mevi and Shvar Amitzrim, they brought Egyptian oxen. I guess those are fat ones. Shekros Asaya and Rechovos, that their stomachs are big. But and the children sit on top. Now this brings the rice again. Because there's 11 be a day and stone cups in their hands. And they came to the shiloh. They went down and they filled it up and they came back onto the ox again.
Oh, so they're more maker. This is more maker.
This is the same as before. We had Machokis. Rabbi Yosef says you have to go. They have to stay on top and lower it. And Tanakam says you don't have to. You can go down in the shiloh alone. You can go down. This is a brisa, yes. So what do I want from all this? All this was a very beautiful. But what do you get from it? That even Rabbi Yehuda holds that all she'enos b'di'adam, that a non-intentional ohel is not an ohel, which would have helped us shot in the Mishnah by the bed, but that fell off because it's egg growth. Because Rabbi Yehuda agrees that if it's a malo egg growth, that size of an egg growth, so then even if it's unintentional ohel, it still is an ohel. So now our shot in the Mishnah is lost. We don't know why is Rabbi Yehuda hold that you could sleep under the bed. Even though it's not made intentionally for the ohel under it, but what's the difference? The bed is a malo egg growth from the ground, and therefore everyone should hold that it's an ohel. If it's an ohel, it shouldn't be allowed to sleep under the bed. That's what the Gemara finally gets to the kasha. Barei mita, here it is. Barei mita, the yesh will come a growth. And Mutanan, Abiyuda Omer, no again, mita, but so Abiyuda holds that the bed is not considered an ohel, even though it's many a growth. It's many a growth from the bottom, from the floor until the bottom of the bed. So how come, as we said, that it's 10 tefachim, even according to Tanakam, it's 10 tefachim. So how come Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's okay to sleep under it? This was it's one sugya till now. From the after the Mishnah, this was one sugya that the Gemara has been dealing with. Why should Rabbi Yehuda hold that bed is not considered an ohel and you're not allowed to sleep under it? Even though he holds the whole chain of them, it's not an ohel, but the kama grofim, if it's a grove, then it should be a old mafsik. So now Gemara comes to the answer. Shani mita hoil ulagava asuya. The bed is made for its top. The bed is less of an ohel, not because it was made unintentionally. It wasn't made at all for beneath it. It's the purpose of the bed is only to sleep on top of it. So it's not an ohel. It's the opposite of an ohel. An ohel is that it's covering, it's sheltering what's under it. But a bed is only made for the top. The reason why you elevate it is because you don't want to sleep down on the floor or low down on the floor. You want to be elevated. So you put it on feet, but not that you're interested in the ohel at all. That's why it's not an ohel. So the reason why you're allowed to sleep under the bed, according to Abiyuda, according to this first reason, is because it's made for its top. It's not made for its bottom, so it's not considered an ohel. The Chorus has nothing to do with all she'enos b'di'adam. It's a much difference for it. But it's not made at all. I mean, of course, if you hold that it's not made intentionally, so it's surely not an ohel. But even if you'd hold that that's not a reason that it shouldn't be an ohel, but here it's worse. It's less of an ohel because it was made dafka for its top.
I have a problem with that. Once it's made for its top, it's a cleat.
What's the problem with
You
Siklin?
can sleep on it. It's made to sleep on.
What's the problem?
You can't use it for schach.
We're not using for schach. We're sleeping on the bed inside the sukkah. Everyone sleeps on a bed in the sukkah. It's not a problem. He wants
Yeah,
to sleep.
but not
He wants
under
to sleep
the
under the bed. So then we bring
Right,
down.
so-
Is it considered an oil or not? So it's not considered an oil because it's not made for its under. It's made for its.
What I'm saying,
made for on top.
I'm saying that it's a cliche.
What do you want?
It's a sur. It's an.
What's a so? It's a bed.
It becomes the davashi shemekabel tamid.
Do what you want. When it's not schach, we're not making schach out of it. We're sleeping on the bed. We're sleeping under the bed. What's the problem? You just want to know if it's all mafsik. You're thinking about schach. We're not talking about schach. We're talking about sleeping under the bed. So he says that the bed is not a mafsik because it's not an oil, because it's made for its top. It's not made for its bottom.
But even though the mice, you see it's also mafsik.
Who says it's mafsik?
You look up and you see a bed.
You see a cover. You see a cover also. You look up on top of your cover. It's not an oil. It's not an oil. There's no problem to see something on top of you. The thing is that it's considered an oil or not, so it's not considered an oil. The Marsa Kasha that an ox is also made for its top.
Can you use that again too much? Can you put a kazait of basar of a man's flesh underneath there? And you're saying
The Gemara is saying that's not considered an oil because it's not made for its bottom. It's made for its top, so it's not considered an oil.
goes right through.
So it's not an oil. And
No,
Tanakam
it
would say
goes
there
right
is an
through.
oil.
You could say that's a halacha.
This is the machlokas. If you them the rabbanon, is it considered an oil? Now Tanakam is not considered. It is considered an oil. If you those it's not made an oil because it's made for its top. The Gemara is the kasha that the oxen. We said the ox is considered an oil. The oxen who transported the kids to the shiloh, they are considered an oil. Why are they an oil? The back. Why is the ox? What is the back of an ox made for? It's made for its top. It's not made for its bottom. So why is the ox considered an oil? If you're saying now there's something which is made for its top, it's not considered an oil. So why is everybody all consider the ox is an oil? Shvarm nami l'gaban asuyan. The ox is also made for its back. It's not made for under its back. What is the ox made for? To use the top of its back, not for under its back. The Gemara says that sometimes we do use the back of an ox as oil. We're not in this world so much, but in the world of the shepherds, sometimes when it's too sunny or it's too rainy, they go under the ox and they have a shelter. The ox could be a shelter. They tell the ox not to sit down. I guess they have. They tell him don't lie down right now. And the rower goes under the ox, and he's sheltered by the ox's back. So the back is made. Of course, it's not made man-made. It's God-made, but that's what it's used for. So since the ox is used to be for under the ox by the shepherd, that's considered that it's made for the use of under. So it's considered an oil. And therefore, when the kids go to fill up the water from the shiloh, they're allowed to go on the ox. The ox is considered an oil because it's made for its under. It is considered an oil. The Marsa Kasha that a bed is also sometimes used a little bit at least means the main purpose of the ox is not to shelter the shepherd. But once in a while, he's saying it's good enough. If that's so then the shoes that are under the bed is also something. It's true, the main bed is made for its top, to sleep on top of the bed, but it has some use for under also. You put things under the bed. The bed also, people put shoes under their bed. Rashi says that the one in Baba Basra says it's not commendable to put about a lot of things under your bed. The Gemara says Talmid Chacham only has shoes under it. Amoris's bed is full of everything, also bolos. It's like confusion under his bed. But Talmid Chacham only puts shoes. But whatever it is, the bed is also used to store things under it. So if you're saying that the fact that the ox's back is used to shelter the shepherd once in a while, so the bed is also like that, and the bed also should be considered an ohel. And if Yehuda says you let us sleep under the ohel under the sukkah, why? It should be considered an ohel. The more answers, you're right. That's not the fact that it just shelters the shoes. That's not considered an ohel. And the fact that the shepherd goes under the ox's back sometimes to shelter himself from the sun of the rain, that's not considered enough of an ohel. The back of the ox is considered an ohel because it's constantly being an ohel, not for the shepherd once in a while, because it's protecting the cavity of the body of the ox. Inside the body of the ox, whatever it has inside there, the stomach and the heart and everything that's inside the cavity, there's also a hollow space. The Gemara says there's a hollow space of a tefach also. So it is protecting. The Gemara doesn't say it openly, but I think that's what Rashi says, that there's a cavity that also is being protected as the ohel. The ohel, the back of the ox, is considered made for underneath it, not under the abdomen to the floor. That was the first thing the Gemara tried with the shepherd under the abdomen. We're talking about the innards. The back of the ox is protecting its innards, and that's also considered an ohel. And therefore, the kids are allowed to go on top of the back of the ox because it's considered an oil, mafsik, everything under it, because it's made to protect the cavity of the ox, and therefore it's an oil. And a malef, it'll be a grave underneath, on the ground. It's very protected. The kids that are on top of the back of the ox are protected because there's oil mafsik. How do you know that it's considered a protection? It's made to protect the innards. Shanema, probably don't need the pasuk, but the Gemara reads the pasuk already. Or Basa Tal Bisheni, but someone's forgiven to Sachacheni. This is a pasuk in Eov, where someone, a human being, but no difference between a human and an animal. Eov says that Hashem, you clothed me with skin and flesh, and you sheltered me with bones and sinews. Anyway, what do you see? Rashi says the word schach over here is called that it's roofing, that it's ceiling over him. So the fact that he has skin and flesh and bones, that's all considered a schach over his innards. That's
the back.
The back of the back of the ox is considered a schach over his cavity of innards.
So we're measuring it even from the stomach. We saying the agrof, malay agrof.
Here the Gemara seems to say not. Here the Gemara seems to say measuring from the back. Even the innards of the ox are also considered in the malo agrof. Rashi seems to say that also, not only from the stomach, from the abdomen, as I would have thought, the measuring from the abdomen of the ox until the floor, if it's a malo agrof. So it seems not. It seems that the cavity of the ox is also considered in the cheshbon of the malo agrof. That's the first answer to the Gemara. Just to summarize it so far, that Rabbi Yehuda holds that oil she'eino also b'dedem is not an oil. If it's not made intentionally for an oil, it's not an oil. And that's why he says the mission over there by the beams and the bricks and the things that were naturally became an oil is not an oil. But he holds if it's a malo agrof, it is an oil, even if it was not made intentionally. The ox is considered an oil because it has a malo agrof, and it is made for beneath it because Hashem made that the back of the ox protects its innards, and therefore it's considered an oil. It's pasuk in Eov. And as far as the bed, why is the bed not considered an oil? Because it's made for its top. The fact that it has shoes under it, that's not considered a kavua use, and therefore the bed is not an oil. So far we could very shortly, very briefly explain the view of the Mishnah. The reason why he holds that you're allowed to sleep under the bed because the bed is not an oil, because it's made for its top, it's not made for underneath it. The Rabbanan say that it's still considered an oil, even though it's not made intentionally for its top, for its bottom. It's made for its top, but it's also considered an oil. And that's how we pass on to Rabbanan, that the bed is considered an oil. Of course, if it's 10 tefachim, less than 10 tefachim is not a problem. There was one more shot to explain Rabbi Yehuda. We could say the reason why he holds you not under the bed is because he goes to Shitaso. He's consistent with his own reasoning. The Amar Sukkah Diras Keva Binan. Yeah, in the beginning of the Masechta, there was Machlokes if you have to have a Diras Arai or a Diras Keva, a permanent dwelling or a temporary dwelling. Rabbi Yehuda is one of those who holds that you have to have or you have to have a permanent dwelling. Where does he say that? I forgot. Where's Rabbi Yehuda? What was the proof that Rabbi Yehuda holds that? That was Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that's the reason why he says that if it's higher than 20 amos, it's still good because Diras Keva. He doesn't hold you have to have a Diras Arai. And so what? That even though the bed is considered an oil, but in relation to the oil, to the sukkah, it's only considered a temporary. That's only Diras oil Arai. Although Asi oil Arai umavata oil Keva. This is the reasoning. I skipped the line. It's true the bed is considered an oil, but it's only a temporary oil. Diras arai. You don't live under your bed. And the sukkah is oil keva. Although asi oil arai mubata oil keva. When you're looking at the two olim, you speak about where's the person? Is the person in the sukkah or is he under the bed? So Rabbi Yehuda says, even though it's true that the bed is considered an oil, but the sukkah is much more of an oil. It's a keva, and therefore it's not considered that you're under the bed. The Rabbanan say that the sukkah itself is also considered all arai. Well, everything's arai. The sukkah is arai. The bed is arai. So therefore, it would be considered a hefsek. There was one problem that Reb Shimon, we find also that he holds it sukkah as a diras keva, and he holds in our Mishnah that the bed is a problem. He's the one who said that Rabbi Gamliel told us about a servant Tavi, but he holds that not Yotze under the bed. If the whole reason about Yehuda is because he holds that the sukkah is a diras keva, the bed is all arai, and therefore you consider it still in the sukkah, so Reb Shimon also should have held like him. And Reb Shimon argues on it. For Reb Shimon, the Amar Nami sukkah diras keva binan. Where was that Reb Shimon? He's the one who says you have to have protection from you have to have 4 walls. You have to have not 2 in a tefach, you have to have 3 in a tefach. And that the Gemara proved before that he holds Diras Keva. Rab Shimon Dama Nami Sukkah Diras Keva Binan, and still he says Asiyah Olarim Batalol Keva. He holds that you're not allowed to sleep under the bed. The Gemara says you're right. Bapligi Marsava Asiyah Olarim Batalol Keva, or Marsava Asiyah Olarim Batalol Keva. It's not a given just because the sukkah is a keva and the bed is arai, so it's not considered a separation. That's not a given. It could be. Someone could argue. Shimon argues, and he holds that even though it's true that the sukkah is a permanent dwelling and the bed is a temporary dwelling, he holds that it's still considered a separation. But that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds, that since this is only a temporary, so in contrast, in relationship, it's not considered all mafsik. But that's not, it can hold two ways. It means there are Rabbanan, the Bar Mishnah, that say that you're not allowed to sleep under the bed. It can be one of two reasons. Either because you hold that the sukkah is also an all arai, everything's arai, this is arai, that's arai. So it's considered that you're sleeping under the bed, and you're not Yotzei. Or even if you hold that the sukkah is keva and the bed is arai, you might also hold that the all arai is enough to be considered a machitza, a separation between you and the sukkah. That's what Shimon holds. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the sukkah is keva, the bed is arai, and that's not enough it's not considered you're under the bed, it's considered you're in the sukkah. The Ma'aseh we pass like the Rabbanan. To sum up the Gemara, we have two pshatim in Rabbi Yehuda. We tried one that didn't work. We tried that maybe because it's all chain also with the other, but that's not enough of a reason because it's egg roll. So that pshat falls off. But what are we left with? Either because the bed is made for its top, not for its bottom, so it's not an ohel, or because it's only considered an all arai, in contrast to the sukkah, which is a diras keva, and therefore the osya all arai and vatal all keva. Two reasons of Rabbi Yehuda. We don't pass like them. We pass like the Rabbanan that all chain also with the other is still considered an ohel, and even if it's made for its top, it's still considered an ohel, and even if the sukkah is also only the sukkah is arai and the bed is arai, or even if the sukkah is keva but the bed is arai and it is considered a mafsik, so therefore you're not allowed to sleep under the bed. But as the first line of the Gemara said, that's only if it's 10 tefachim off the ground, from the bottom of the bed until the floor is 10 tefachim. If not, you'd be allowed to sleep under the bed. Most of our beds are not 10 tefachim, so you wouldn't be allowed to sleep under the bed. You would be allowed to, because our beds are not 10 tefachim. And also we said a bunk bed, if the beds are connected, the legs of the...
It's to the floor, it's considered floor. Why? Because under 10 it's considered...
Under 10 is not considered an ohel. So therefore, you'd be allowed to sleep under a bed which is not 10 tefachim, from the floor to the bottom of the bed. And even by bunk bed, if the beds are connected, like most bunk beds are, so then you do count from the bed to bed, from the top of the bottom bed to the bottom of the top bed, and if it's not 10 tefachim, you're allowed to sleep over there. It's a nice conversation piece that people come into your sukkah and they see a bunk bed, oh, Yashtach Samit and Allah Yatza, and they say it's not 10 tefachim, where do you measure from? So if you have such a bunk bed, it will be topic of discussion. But you are Yotzei if it's less than 10 tefachim. The next Gemara, a little bit. Rabbi Kiva is not here. Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're Yotzei under the bed, one of two reasons, either because he holds that since it's made for the top, the bed is made for the top, so it's not considered an ohel. It's not made for on, it's made for on top. And the other possibility is that he holds that it's the sukkah is a diras keva, and the bed is only all arai. Lo asi all arai vata lo keva. Rabbi Kiva is not here. Rabbi Kiva is not on the subject here. Maybe Rabbi Shimon, you mean? So Rabbi Shimon holds that, even though he holds that the sukkah is also all arai, but he holds that the sukkah is all keva, but he holds that also all arai vata lo keva. He has that even though it's all arai, so you can't sleep under the bed. And that's what you're passing. You're passing, you're not allowed to sleep under the bed, but it's only less than 10 tefachim you could. And the last Gemara is an Agadata. Rabbi Shimon, nice of Tav Yavdo. Rabbi Shimon said the story of the servant, the slave of Rabbi Gamliel, that slept under the bed. And Rabbi Gamliel said to his kingdom, you see how smart he is. He knows about the Potter, and therefore he's sleeping under the bed. Rabbi Shimon, the same thing Rabbi Shimon is saying in the Brisa, as he said in the Mishnah, Mesichaso, this word Mesichaso, from the talk of Rabbi Gamliel, from his talk, we can learn two halachas. First of all, you see that slaves are put from sukkah, that they have din of a woman as far as the mitzvahs go, and they're put from a time-related positive commandment, and therefore sukkah they're put from. The same way women are allowed to sleep and eat out of the sukkah, so too are avadim. And also you see that if you sleep under the bed, you're not Yosef. What did he say? He says that my servant Tavi knows that avadim are potter, therefore he's sleeping under the sukkah. So you learn two halachas from Rabbi Gamliel's talk. You learn that avadim are potter from sukkah, and you see that you're not Yosef under the bed. The more is a kasha on the wording.
Let me ask you a question, Rav. Why can't he, even if he's pater, what if he just sleeps in the sukkah without being under the bed?
There was no room. Of course, you can sleep under the sukkah, like same way women eat in the sukkah, but you don't have to. And he had no room, so he left under the bed in order to be ready. If Gamliel needs him, he's the servant. But he
And
knows
it was more than 10 tefachim. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, it was 10 tefachim, right? It was a bed which was 10 tefachim. If it wouldn't be 10 tefachim, then he would have been Yotze. So the bed was more than 10 tefachim. It seems that the stam beds in the Gemara were more than 10 tefachim. The Gemara asks, how come he says Mesichaso? It's not a regular word. If you go back one line here, it says, I'm Rab Shimon, Mesichaso from the talk. And usually you'd say the word Midvorov. That's the kasha. Why did it from the words? Why did it say Mesichaso? The answer is that Rabbi Shimon himself, by using the word Mesichaso, he's also trying to teach us something. Besides telling us he could learn, he's trying to tell us that you could learn something from the Sicha. If he would have said Midvorov, I'm sorry. How do you know that even the idle talk, Sichas Chulin, of Tamid Chachamim also has to be studied? Because it says, the leaf will not wither. So you talk about a tree that has fruit and everything, and of course the fruit of the Talmud Chacham, that's his speech, whatever he talks about, he wants to teach you something. And then if he says Midvar, you'd say when he says something, you have to learn from him. But he wants to tell you, not only when he's telling you something of importance, even when he's done talking, Sichas Chulin of the Talmud Chacham also, you could learn something from between the lines. So even though he just was telling his friends, you see my servant is a smart Talmud Chacham, but you can learn from the halachas from that. And one was that Avadim put it from the sukkah, and the other one was that if you sleep under the sukkah, you're not Yotze. And what have we learned from this? That's the Sichas Chulin, Shatamid Chacham, and Shrichalim, but that even the idle talk of Tamid Chacham also, you have what to learn from. So that's the end of the sukkah. And we pass him that you're not allowed to sleep under the bed, but if it's you're not Yotze, but if it's less than 10 Chacham, you are Yotze. And the rest is not a sukkah now, but we'll stop here. Easy ending. And tomorrow we'll have the sukkah about what they call Maimid. That's going to come up tomorrow.
Rebbe,
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good everybody.
Rebbe.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I held on to this because it's a beautiful halakha ka'ora, but it wasn't minei obey from your shir. But on the Mishnah, the Meleches Shloima in the Mishnah was troubled by the lashon that it says lo yatsa. Why? Because he said it should have said aser lishen takas amita. Why? Because in fact, a sukkah, if you want to eat, you have to eat in a sukkah. If you want to sleep, you have to sleep in a sukkah, but you don't need to. So he comes from that, comes the Pnei Yoshua and answers from the Bala Ma'or.
I don't understand the question. The whole Masechta says like that, Yotze, not Yotze. It talks about if the sukkah is possible or not, and if the structure is good, and you want to know if he's Yotze, so he says Yatsa lo Yatsa. What's wrong with the wording?
This is the Meleches Shloima on the Mishnah. So listen to the teretz, you'll see the beauty of the kasha. The Pnei Yoshua comes along from the Bala Ma'or and says like this: Bala Ma'or Sof Pesachim has a chiluk between matzah in Pesach and sukkah, because on matzah it's clear. The Gra says it also. You want to eat after the first day, eat. You don't want to eat, you don't have to eat. You can eat other things. It's a mitzvah every kazayis, but you don't have to. So he says by sukkah, shani sukkah bi matzah, because a person can't live 3 days without sleeping. Because a person can't live 3 days without sleeping, it's chiyuva de gavra, it's a mitzvah chiyuvis, and therefore the nafka min aladina is on matzah you don't bless every day. On sukkah you bless every day, not because of achila, because of shena, because shena is a mitzvah chiyuvis in the sukkah because you can't live without it more than 3 days. So therefore, it's a nafka min aladina on bercha sukkah every day. And it's also masbir, the lashon here, why it doesn't say lo yatsa, why it says lo yatsa instead of aser lishon takas amita.
Okay,
I in Meleches Shlomo on the Mishnah and the Pnei Yoshua.
Okay, Yashikar. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yashikar, everybody. Have a good day. See you tomorrow. Thank you so much.